This episode of the Lawn Care Business Success podcast is brought to you by Equipment Defender. Check out the racks that stop theft in its tracks. With trimmer racks available in 2, 3, and 4 trimmer configurations, backpack blower racks that fit any size, make, and model of backpack blower, and many other racks available for the tools and equipment needed for your lawn care or landscaping business. Go check them out at lawncarebusinesssuccess.com/Equipment Defender. And listen to this, guys. If you use coupon code LCBS10 at the checkout, you'll save 10% off your order. You're listening to the Lawn Care Business Success Podcast, the weekly show sharing proven methods and systems in marketing, equipment, and customer service. Educational and motivational to help make your lawn care business an overwhelming success. Now here's your host, Julio Tomei. Welcome, Lawn Care Nation, to another episode of the Lawn Care Business Success Podcast. I'm your host, Julio Tomei, and this is episode number 147, entitled, Don't Compete on Price Alone. Create value instead. Well, hello, everybody, and thanks again for joining me this week on another episode of the Lawn Care Business Success Podcast. I really appreciate you guys tuning in each and every week, as well as for those questions and comments and feedback that you guys have been sending in. Like I said, I really do appreciate the time that it takes for you guys to reach out to me. Also, with that feedback and those questions and comments, it helps to let me know what sort of content you're looking for and what podcast episodes I should be focusing on creating in the future. Just by the questions that you guys are asking, it sort of lets me know, the holes that might be missing in previous content that I have created. So, like I said, I really do appreciate that. On the note of appreciation, I also have to, take a moment here to say thank you to everyone in the past week who has been buying podcast t-shirts and supporting the content that I create. I really do appreciate that. The out front bestseller so far is my Lawntrepreneur shirt. So if you haven't checked that out and you want to see some of the other shirts that I've created, I believe I have about 6 different designs at the moment, including one with the podcast logo on it. You can check them out. They're available currently on Amazon.com. And if you're a Prime member, you get some free shipping with that as well. So you can check them out at Amazon.com/shop/lawn care business success. And like I said, I really do appreciate those who have purchased shirts this past week, as well as those of you who have been promoting my shirts on Instagram, taking photos of the shirt that you've purchased with you wearing it, and sharing that with your audiences as well. Like I said, I really do appreciate you guys supporting me in my effort for creating this type of content. And like I said, it's just humbling to see people reach out and purchase shirts and wear them and share them on social media. So this week's episode, I want to talk about, with it being springtime, a lot of calls have been coming through for my lawn care business. There's been literally days where it's been gangbusters. I remember one particular moment this past week where I was mowing a lawn. I checked my phone previous. Was sort of caught up, went and mowed this one lawn for literally 20 minutes, came back to the truck, checked my phone, and I had 8 voicemail messages. And it was just like, that's insane. In like 20 minutes that, the phone just doesn't stop ringing. Now that the weather finally is starting to feel like spring, it's like I've talked about before, people just, will spend their time outside, during the nicer weather. And that's where, they start to see that, what they need done in their garden. They start to take notice where when the weather's cold and rainy and stuff, they usually, when they're home and stuff, are inside. They're not paying attention to their gardens or lawns. So it's been good to see. And like I mentioned before in previous episodes, I don't do any advertising for my business. So it's, as far as delivering flyers door to door and all that sort of stuff, I don't do any of that stuff anymore because just the organic traffic to my website and having Google Places and all that has been, year after year, more than enough calls, let's say, that I can handle on my own. So it's really neat to see, all the effort and work and pieces that you put into place for building your business online, how that sort of, it just, has a life of its own and it just starts to take off. So because of that, this week, I was thinking, you're a lot of times going out, you're doing quotes, you're doing bids, and, how do you not compete with other companies on price? How do you, focus in on creating value for your customers? I've talked about a couple of examples in the past. I'll refresh your memory on some of those coming up, and we'll get into a little bit more of what I mean about creating value. So I'm just going to play the podcast announcements, and then we'll get into the episode in its entirety right after this. So stay tuned. Hey guys, if you have any questions or comments about the show, I'd love to hear from you. You can head on over to lawncarebusinesssuccess.com/contact. And while you're there, why not join my mailing list and get access to a free PDF document of a landscape maintenance contract you can feel free to copy and use in your own business. For you Instagram users out there, be sure to follow me at lawncarebusinesssuccess. And if you haven't checked out my videos yet, well, what are you waiting for? Be sure to subscribe to the Lawn Care Business Success YouTube channel. Now, I know you guys love listening to audio while you work as much as I do, so I've partnered up with Audible to offer you guys a free 30-day trial and 2 free audiobooks of your choice. There's no long-term commitments, and you can cancel anytime. And get this, even if you cancel during your free trial period, you still get to keep the 2 free audiobooks. It's a great way to try the service and to see if Audible is right for you. So why not give it a try? Head on over to lawncarebusinesssuccess.com/audible. Now back to the show. Okay, so before the break there, I was talking about, not competing on price alone, but creating value instead. So I mentioned about some of the previous podcasts throughout, the course of the last 3 years, where I've given some examples of this. So I'll go over one of them here that is an obvious one, and it's the example of the company that I talk about from time to time that does aerations. So this company, if you haven't listened to any of the podcasts where I've talked about this, this is the company that hires predominantly students and young adults. And basically what they do is they drive around in those like Ford Econoline type 15 passenger type vans, and they'll have a trailer behind them, and the van will be loaded with 14 young adults or students, and the trailer will be an open flatbed type trailer that has literally 15 of the Ryan aerators on it. And what they do is they just proliferate neighborhoods, and they will drop off one student with an aerator full of gas on the corner and let them go at it door to door. And then they'll put another one a few blocks away, and then another one a few blocks away, and they absolutely saturate the neighborhood. And these kids just go door to door, knocking on doors, and offering really inexpensive aerating. So typically, before these companies, started popping up, and I've mentioned before how this has sort of started a trend that there was one company, and it's led to sort of a downward spiral to the bottom. as far as price goes, with these companies all competing on price, because others took notice of this, that these guys were basically just blanketing these neighborhoods and doing all of these aerations. And the following year there was, the first year there was one company doing it. Then the following year there was two or three, and now that is the norm. There's two or three, and now there's, I've seen single, guys just going out and renting aerators at Home Depot and, then just hitting neighborhoods on their days off. They might be unemployed, or they might be, somebody who has a regular job who's maybe on shift work, say like a firefighter or something, who will just go out to Home Depot on his day off, rent an aerator, and then just hit door to door, getting as many air ratings as he can done on his days off to make some extra money. So like I said, when originally, before these companies came around, the average aeration price that I was doing for clients was $75 for an average city lot. And these guys came around and they started offering, aerating, as little as, I've heard $30 to do aeration. And in a lot of cases, they were burning a lot of customers because these kids were being paid, not by the hour or anything. They were being paid by, how many aerations can you get done? So they were getting a couple bucks per aeration, and then the company was getting the rest of it. So, in these kids' minds, they were just about, hey, let's, crank them out, get as many done as we can. And they were cutting a lot of corners. And a lot of clients started to see and started sharing stories with me about, feeling burned that they had fallen for this, and, hired these companies because they were offering the perceived value of convenience, where, some of these people didn't have to look up a company and call, that these people were just knocking on the door. They'd pay them cash. They'd go and do the job and, leave. And that was the end of the interaction. And, I've shared some stories before in the past about how some of these guys were aerating. I think one customer said that they were going to aerate in a cross pattern. And she assumed that to mean that they were going to aerate, basically laying stripes, if you will, in one direction, and then come back over the lawn in the opposite, 90-degree angle to the first, pattern that they had laid. But literally what they meant was literally they were going to basically draw a big X with the aerator on the back lawn, and that was it. So they apparently went around the perimeter of the lawn and then just went from one corner to the other corner and then the opposite corner to the other corner, and they left. And as you can imagine, most of the lawn wasn't even aerated. But they were just trying to get as many done as they could. And another thing that I started to notice with these companies was them not going to the full depth that the aerator could go, that they were going very shallow because it was much faster and it was easier to maneuver and turn. So they were, barely aerating in some cases. This company was, going on the premise of the perceived value that, it was convenience that they were offering because these homeowners didn't have to do anything. They knew. And, over the years now, they're still quite popular. And, a lot of times customers know that they don't have to phone somebody for aerating, that somebody will be along at one point or another to aerate their lawn. If they so choose. So, like I said, what this has led to, though, is, the customer getting a perceived value of convenience, but actually, what they're not getting is obviously the job done properly in a lot of cases. And also now, because of other companies taking notice, what's happening is that these other companies trying to emulate this are now coming earlier in the season, trying to, beat out the other company and get as many lawns done. And, each year it seems like it's earlier and earlier and earlier. And the problem with this is that we get so much rain. And one of the, biggest benefits of aeration, obviously, is to reduce compaction of soil. But the problem is that only happens if the soil can actually withstand the weight of the aerator itself. Otherwise, you are, one of the leading causes of the compaction, or you're, adding to that compaction. And this is what I'm noticing, is that these guys are going out after the, heavy rain and, throughout the winter. And I'm talking, after, weeks and weeks of rain, and they're just going out there because, they're trying to beat the other company, but the ground isn't ready yet for it. And they're aerating these lawns, where it's squishy and mushy, and, you can just hear the water coming out of them. And, they're putting these, 200-300 pound machines, on, these soggy lawns. And it's just leading to more compaction. So it's actually, not giving the customer the benefit. The problem is that most homeowners don't understand this, and they don't, realize that they're actually doing probably more damage than good by having these guys do it so early in the season. We're talking like in January, that these guys are starting to aerate. So it just leads to, these companies just competing on price. It leads to them going, earlier and earlier, and the customer is basically the one losing out. Now, where I'm going with this as far as competing on price is, when I first started seeing these guys, it was very easy to get discouraged and say they're taking all of the aeration jobs away. These guys are stealing all the business and all this sort of stuff. And you would see what they were doing and see that, they're going earlier, that they're, not going as deep as they should with the aeration cores. And you saw that they were basically taking advantage of clients. But there was nothing that you could do. And they were also, of course, doing it cheaper and cheaper. But I finally realized, after a while thinking about it, going, well, what am I going to do? Am I going to offer these dirt cheap prices for aerating? In some cases, cheaper than the mowing for doing aerating. And then I started to think about it and think, no, if you really think about this, I offer so much more value, because just even in one instance, these guys are just kids. They don't know what they're doing, but all they have with them is the aerator. They can't offer fertilizing. They can't offer reseeding. They can't even offer to clean up all the cores that they track around on the sidewalks and driveways. So they're literally leaving a huge mess, around the driveways and sidewalks and stuff when they're pushing their machines, because the cores are all falling. Where when I'm doing an aeration, not only am I doing it thoroughly and covering the entire lawn and doing it at the proper depth and doing it at the proper time of year. For example, once I finish this podcast today recording, I'm going to go out and start aerating for the first time this year. It is, April 23rd, at the time of this recording. And in most cases, some of these guys have been aerating since January, when it was just nasty and soggy and the ground was way too soft. And here I am, just going to do it now, because we've had a few weeks of, some nice weather. It hasn't rained. The ground during mowing has been fantastic. It's been holding up. No ruts, no anything like that. And for the rest of this week, it's going to be fantastic weather as well. So it's the perfect time now. We're getting to spring, the sunshine, everything is starting to kick in. Now is the ideal time. So I'm giving my customers the obviously experience as a value of me knowing what I'm doing, of me having their lawn, the best interest ahead of me just strictly out there to make money. I want their lawn basically to get the full value. And that means aerating when the aerator is not going to lead to compaction just by it being on the lawn, when the ground can't withstand the weight of that machine. So, and then on top of that, I'm cleaning up after myself. I'm blowing those cores back onto the lawn that may be on the sidewalk and driveway after I load the machine back up onto my trailer. I'm also fertilizing and liming at the same time. So some of that fertilizer and lime is going right down into the cores. There's so much more value that I'm creating with that same service that I have not discounted my price on the aeration portion, not even a bit. So I'm still charging $75 for all of the aerations that I'm doing, and more for larger lots, but for the average lot. So essentially, there's not aerations that I do for less than $75. And in some of these cases, these customers' neighbors are, I've had it done earlier in the season for $30 or $50. But they understand the value that I create, because if, they were to get the aerating done, that person can't provide those other services at the same time. And then the customer would either have to go out there and clean up the mess themselves. So there's a lot more to it. And when you start to think about it and start to understand when you're quoting a job, to understand what it is that you're quoting for. What are the added benefits that you can add? What value are you creating that makes that more than just the simple task of, aerating a lawn or mowing a lawn? What are those value added things? Another, thing that I do with my services, obviously, is it doesn't have to be directly related to the actual service, like in the case of aerating and me cleaning the cores off the sidewalk and driveways. But it can be other things that add value. For example, me billing by credit card adds value to the services that I provide, because the customer does not have to remember to write a check each week, doesn't have to go out and put the check, under the front mat each week or in the mailbox, or, in the past I even had a customer leave a check in their barbecue each week before I started doing credit cards. And the credit card just makes it super simple. They don't have to worry about it. And in most cases, they're collecting their, loyalty points for using that credit card. So now when I'm doing an aeration, I'm selling it as super simple lawn care. And I say to the client, the only thing the client needs to do is bring in their yard waste can from the curb, on garbage day once it's empty, which they're doing with their regular garbage can anyways. So I make it very simple, like I said, because I show up on the same day each week. I, rain or shine, so they know the reliability is there, so there's value. I, mow their lawn, rain or shine. I bag the clippings because that is the norm here. I put those clippings in the city yard waste bin. So every house has a green bin for compostable, things that can be turned into compost, yard waste, food scraps, that sort of stuff. And the city picks that up on garbage day, every week. So I usually schedule the neighborhoods according to the garbage day, if possible. And that way, I'm mowing their lawns, putting the clippings in the bin. I'm rolling the bin out to the curb, ready for garbage pickup the next day. So all the customer has to do is on garbage day is, at the end of the day when all the garbage trucks have passed, they just need to wheel their bins back to wherever they store their garbage bins. And then at the end of each month, I'm billing their credit cards. They never have to leave checks each week or anything like that. So essentially, when they hire my service, they never have to think about it. And that's why I've been, in part of my sales pitch, when I meet people and talk to them about their lawn care and stuff, I always say I try to make it super simple lawn care. We do what you've asked for, according to the quote. We never charge anything on your credit card that you haven't, approved of previously. I even say, if, we only do what you've, asked for and all that. But if there's something that I see in your lawn that needs attention, say there's some shrubs that need trimming or something like that, I will send you an email letting you know and telling you how much. If you would like it done, just respond to the email. If you don't want it done, don't respond. And I know that means that you don't want it done and you won't hear from me again on it. I just keep it very simple. I sell it as, very, very simple lawn care. They don't need to think about it. Everybody's, so busy this day and age. There's so much going on, so many kids' activities and all that. So I just, play off of that, it's very simple, very easy. Now, another example I'm going to give you guys is one where I have a customer, and this customer is a bit different. And creating value and providing that value, things like the credit card payments and stuff like that, they get used to that. And it can make it much harder for them to then want to, switch companies. Say, if there's a flyer that comes to the door from a competitor that has a cheaper price or this or that, they can look and think back at the positive experience, the reliability, the credit card payment system, all of that, and see that all as value that would change, that they would then maybe need to start writing checks each week. And, maybe the person isn't as reliable as what I have been over the previous years. And it makes them very loyal. And sometimes for each individual client, you'll find things that you can add value to that client specifically for them, to keep them happy. And, this can come over time, servicing that client. Now, I'll give you an example of this. And that is, I have a client who, with my website, I have, request a free estimate section. So this client requested a free estimate on my website, had their address, had their, information on there. I went out, looked at their house, did a quote. As I always do, I send an email with the quote, in writing. And the person hired me. And they sent me their credit card information over email. And right from the beginning, I started to have this very, just started noticing that this person was very either introverted or just did not like social interaction. when I, started mowing their lawn, I noticed that the curtains or blinds were always drawn, that there were signs on the door saying, no solicitors, all to that sort of effect. Like they just want to be left alone. And through the course of the years, I also noticed that occasionally this person would come outside and go to their car to leave or to go wherever they were going, while I was there. From time to time, this would happen, where you would catch them outside. And I noticed that they would never make eye contact. They would never say hi. They would never wave. And in fact, I think it was at least 2, maybe 3 years before I even knew what this person looked like, because any interaction was always over email. And even then, it was always very short. For example, over the course of the years that I've been mowing this lawn, I've had to contact them when their credit card expiry date was coming due. Or sometimes I would forget it and I would go to bill their credit card and it would come up declined because their expiry date, would be past due and I didn't notice it. So I would email them and say, your credit card expired and, I need the new number or stuff. And they would respond back each and every time, but there would be no explanation or no sort of salutation. How's it going? Hope you're doing well. Nothing like that. It would just be the new credit card number and expiry date, and that's it. So I started to see this pattern of, the house is always closed off. There's no solicitor signs everywhere. There's, no eye contact. The couple times that I have seen the person come out, they don't stop and talk. They don't stop and chat. They just go straight to the car. And that's it. And yet I go there week after week after week. I mow their lawn. In the fall when the leaves are covering the lawn, I clean up the leaves. I bill them for that. And not once have I heard any, complaint from them for charging them for leaves or anything like that. It's just very, leave me alone. So the interesting thing there is that I started to realize that the value that I create for this specific client is that I don't bother them. That, again, it's very simple lawn care. That he called me once, arranged the lawn care. I've been doing it now, I think going on 5 or 6 years on this particular lawn. And like I say, I've never said a word to this person in person. Never had a conversation with them. I've maybe seen them a total of, I would say, maybe 6 times over the course of those years, where they just happen to be, going out from their house to their car. And like I say, never a hi, never a wave, never nothing. And so I've learned that the value, like I said, that I create for this person is that I just leave them alone because that's all they want. They obviously are either very, very busy, or they just do not like social interaction. So that's the value that I create. I don't pester them. It's very simple. They don't have to, do the checks. They don't have to do nothing like that. They just know that their lawn is taken care of. And each year I, just show up in the spring and I start mowing again. And I go through the whole season mowing their lawn. And they never have to say anything. The only time I contact them, like I say, is if, the occasional time when I need a new credit card number or credit card details updated. And that's it. So, just an interesting way to look at it in that, every customer is different, and some customers are, you learn those quirks about them. You learn those things that you can play off of to keep them satisfied. And like I say, with that particular customer, it's just by doing nothing, by just doing the work and not interacting with them. That's what they, obviously can't confirm that by way, because I've never talked to them about it, but that is, what I see just by the clues that are left, around the property, and just by the body language and stuff when I have seen them. And, even right from the beginning, when I offered to meet up with them and stuff, they said, no, that's fine. Just, in their email, they're like, just come by, have a look at it, email me a price. And that was it. And then that's how it started. And at first I was very wary of that, of course. But I took a chance on it, and it's been, a good customer now for about 6 seasons. So there's value in very strange places sometimes that you can create for individual clients. A lot of times, though, it can be the opposite. And, with some elderly clients that are, alone a lot of times, the value that you create could be simply taking a few minutes to talk to them each time. And that could be the difference for them on what they're looking for in a lawn care service. Is just a friendly face, just someone to chat with. And, I have those types of clients as well who will talk to me about, my family, my kids, how they're doing, all that. And they'll remember details about, my kids' sports and things like that, or if they're going on a trip for sports and that, they'll ask about that. And, that's all they're looking for, is just that, few minutes each week where they can interact with you. Because in lots of cases, they may be feeling lonely and that, and they look forward to those chats. So that can be the value that you're creating for that particular client, is just taking those few minutes to talk to them. So it's not always, about the services, about, all that. And it's, obviously can be difficult to figure that out in the beginning, but you can use those clues as you get that experience that, if it is an elderly client, that, you can expect that that person is going to want to chat. So instead of brushing them off and stuff, consider that as part of your bid, that, hey, this job is going to take 5 extra minutes each week because this person's going to want to chat. So maybe, your price is a couple bucks more expensive to compensate for that. The only thing I would say there is follow through. If you are going to, increase somebody's price in your head before you quote them, because of that, then follow through each week and do take that time and create that value for them. It can be very interesting, but it can, like I said, create that loyalty with your clients, and all of those things that come together. In the beginning you would have, or I would have rather, is customers I would quote a price for, and then they would say, well, can you do it for this much? Or this guy is doing it for this much, or this guy quoted me this. And when I was starting out, because you were hungry for work, you would take that stuff on. And, I would find that I was doing a lot more work for less pay. And I started to, dislike those jobs. And I would be disgruntled when I would go and do those jobs because I knew I wasn't getting compensated for the value that I was providing. And, take, for instance, if I were to take on an aeration, like I said earlier, and do it for those cheap prices, but then I'm still aerating and cleaning up after myself and cleaning their driveways and all that stuff. And then, I've got fertilizer and lime and stuff on my trailer that I can also offer to them at the same time. But I've made, not the money I should have on that aeration. So now I remember all of that stuff. And when a customer says to me, the aeration one is an easy example because, a customer will say, well, those guys will do it for this much. And I'll say, hey, great. You can wait for them to come along then. Because I said, I know what I'm doing. I know that I'm doing it at the proper time. You won't see me aerating in January. I know that we'll leave your driveways and sidewalks clean. And I can also give you those value added services of, selling you those extras of lime and fertilizer and all that stuff that you need for your lawn at the exact same time. So it's all done. It's ready to go. You don't have to then do that yourself or look to another service provider to do that for you. And, they start to realize that, yes, that is all value. And that is all worth, that extra bit of, dollar difference. So I hope this episode has created value for you guys in, giving you some insight in, trying to not, always compete on price when you may be putting in the extra effort. It can be difficult in the beginning, like I said, when you're starting out and you're just trying to build your business. But over time, as you get busier and more work and a bigger client list, it becomes much easier to stand firm on your price. Another thing that I found is just with clients who, ask you to lower the price. For instance, if I say I'm doing an aeration and I quote them for $75 and they say, oh, the guy last year was doing it for $50. Will you do $50? I found when I started that each and every time I would lower the price for them to get the job, that from then on, that customer was trained that whatever price you quoted was not really the price and that they could negotiate a lower price. And each and every time, those types of clients would ask me for a quote on something, they would always counter offer. And by being firm right from the beginning and being willing to walk away, knowing that, no, that guy last year charged you $50 because, they're doing it at the wrong time. They don't have your best interests at heart and they're leaving a huge mess behind. And that's where that extra $25 is coming in, is that you have my years of experience and expertise knowing when the proper time and that I'm going to aerate your lawn thoroughly and I'm going to clean up after myself. And if you don't like it, then you can hire that guy at $50 and go through that again. So it can be, just a tip there about customers who try to negotiate, that it can always lead to them constantly negotiating after. But if you stand firm, then they're much more likely not to negotiate. I don't negotiate any of my prices anymore. For at least 10 years now, the price is the price, but I'm always willing to walk away if that's not what they want to pay, because I know what I bring to the table. So that's it for this one, guys. Here's to wishing you guys all overwhelming success and freedom in your lawn care business. Bye for now.